So we are into the next segment of our discussion. The next segment of our discussion is the transportation of carbon dioxide. Yesterday, we have seen the transportation of oxygen. Oxygen, right? How the transportation of oxygen occurs by the blood from the alveoli to the tissues, and once it reaches the tissues, it will be offloaded and supplied to the tissues. And this supplied oxygen is used up for cellular respiration. As a result of that, CO2 is produced. Now this produced CO2, carbon dioxide is now has to be sent out, and it should not be remaining in the body because it's a poisonous gas. Yes, now how will it be transported? How will the transportation of CO2 occurs? Right? So here the medium of transportation is the blood. Right? Blood is the medium of transportation, and this transportation occurs from tissues. Right? This transportation occurs from the tissues to the alveoli. In the alveoli, the exchange occurs by this exchange membrane, respiratory membrane. Alveoli is present in the lungs, obviously. Right? It is present in the lungs. This is where the exchange occurs so that this carbon dioxide can be eliminated out of the body. Now, so this transportation in the blood can be transported by three ways, right? So the medium of transportation, the blood, but in the blood, so the transportation is occurring by three methods or three ways rather. So what are these three methods that we have? The three methods is, some of the CO2 is dissolved in the plasma, right? So 7% of it is dissolved in the plasma. So from the tissues, so it comes into the plasma and it gets dissolved and it reaches the alveoli. From the alveoli, it is exchanged out, and it will be eliminated. How much of it is? 7% of it. Least amount of it is the plasma, and the next major amount of the CO2 is transported as carbaminohemoglobin. It is kind of as same as that has taken place in the case of the oxygen. Also the hemoglobin, it got attached to the hemoglobin in the form of carboxyhemoglobin, and it got transported from the alveoli to the tissues. The same thing is occurring here. But here the slight differentiation is it gets attached, the protein part of the hemoglobin. You see the hemoglobin is made of the heme and the protein, the globin protein. So here it gets attached to the amino part of the proteins, right? It gets attached to the amino part of these proteins. As a result of that, you get something called carbaminohemoglobin, right? That's what you are saying, right? You get something called the carbaminohemoglobin, and this carbaminohemoglobin is the compound. It gets occurs in the plasma, and it gets occurs in the hemoglobin, right? RBC, within the RBC. So we have the hemoglobin, and it gets attached to that. And it gets transported. In that method, that is carbaminohemoglobin. How much of it is transported in that way is 20 to 25% of it. 20 to 25% of it is transported in that manner. And the highest amount that is bicarbonate ions. Majority of the CO2 is transported by bicarbonate ions. How much of it is? As high as 70% of it. As high as 70% of it is being transported as carbaminohemoglobin. So you see how it is occurring. So what you are seeing here is, you are seeing the tissues, right? The group of cells you are witnessing here. In the tissues, as a result of cellular respiration, what is being produced? The CO2. The CO2 is being produced. Now this CO2, we have this exchange membrane, the blood capillary. So it is getting diffused here. The process is simple diffusion. So via the simple diffusion process, so it got exchanged here. It got exchanged, and this it crosses the cell membrane of this RBC. What you are seeing is this biconcave shape RBC. So you are seeing this RBC, and it gets transported. It gets transported into RBC. Within the RBC, so we have this very important enzyme called as carbonic anhydrase. Right? There is this enzyme called as carbonic anhydrase is the enzyme. So this enzyme facilitates the formation of something called carbonic acid. Right? So you see the CO2 mixes with the water. Carbon dioxide mixes with the water with the help of this enzyme, that is carbonic anhydrase. With the formation of this compound. The formation of compound called as H2CO3, carbonic acid, and this is an unstable compound. Right? This is an unstable compound, and and this gets disassociated again. This H2CO3 gets disassociated again, and it gets disassociated. As a result of that, you see the formation of bicarbonate ions. Right? You see the formation of bicarbonate ions and H plus ions. Right? Bicarbonate ions and H plus ions. You see, that is why you have more of less pH. Sorry, we have more of H plus ion concentrations, and pH is less because of the formation of all these H plus ions. Now you see, you are witnessing the formation of more of bicarbonate ions, HCO3, more of bicarbonate ions, and their concentration increases within the RBC. As a result of this reaction, there is increased amount of bicarbonate ions. As a result of that, because of the concentration differences between the RBC and the plasma, right? Between the RBC and the plasma, some of these bicarbonate ions, not all of it, some of these bicarbonate ions, diffuse into plasma. Right? Some of these bicarbonate ions diffuse into plasma. As a result of that, since some of it has diffused, and some chloride ions which are present in the plasma will enter into the RBC to counter it. So as a matter of fact, kind of balance it out. What happens is, more of HCO3 is there because of the concentration differences. So it diffuses into plasma, and some chloride ions which are present in the plasma go into the RBC, and the shift of these ions, right? The shift of these ions is called as chloride shift. Right? The shift of these ions, two different ions, that is HCO3 with the chloride. HCO3 with the chloride is called as the chloride shift, or the same thing is referred as Hamburgers phenomenon. Yeah, this is the scientist who had explained this one. So this phenomenon, or this chloride shift concept is called as the Hamburgers, phenomenon. So that is one thing. And you see, this hemoglobin also works as the buffer. What does that mean here is, so here it maintains the pH, the blood pH. How does it do? We have this more of H plus ions that is being produced here. Some of these H plus ions get attached to the hemoglobin. So you are seeing the attachment here. Some of these H plus ions get attached to the hemoglobin, and you see, because of the H plus ion, increased amount of H plus ion, and then affinity to get attached to the hemoglobin. What happens is, there is dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. Yesterday we have seen, the factors which facilitate the dissociation of the dissociation of the oxyhemoglobin. Dissociation of the oxyhemoglobin at the site of the tissues. When this oxyhemoglobin arrives, right? When this oxyhemoglobin arrives from the alveoli to the tissues, in the tissues you are seeing the increased amount of H plus ions. What does it do now is these these H plus ions get attached to the hemoglobin, and as a result of that, whatever the O2 that is attached, is released here now, is released into the RBC, and from there into the plasma, into the tissues, right? So it is being released here, and now you are seeing this O2 is being supplied. So this effect of H plus ions, on the dissociation is called as Bohr effect. This we have seen yesterday, right? So this effect of increased amount of H plus ions to disassociate the oxyhemoglobin to release the oxygen so that it can be supplied to the tissues, is called as Bohr effect. The disassociation concept is called as Bohr effect. And the chloride shift is related to the shifting of ions. Now what happens? This reaction is a reversible reaction, right? This has taken place at the site of tissues. Now this one, as this hemoglobin now is being taken to the alveoli. Now once it reaches the alveoli, there the conditions that favor the dissociation of the bicarbonates. So now you see why this association occurs, because of the more of PCO2. That means partial pressure for oxygen is more in the tissues. Right? Partial pressure for oxygen is more in the tissues. As a result of that, what happens is it got associated, and it led to the formation of bicarbonate ions. But as it travels back to alveoli, towards the alveoli, you have less of partial pressure for oxygen, more of partial pressure for carbon dioxide, and more of partial pressure for oxygen will be there, right? At the alveoli, So when it comes to alveoli, what happens in the alveoli? Do we have more partial pressure, less partial pressure of carbon dioxide? Obviously, you will have at the alveoli less partial pressure for carbon dioxide, more partial pressure for oxygen, right? As a result of that, the same reaction occurs in opposite manner. What does that mean? These two will combine, resulting in the formation of H2CO3. You are seeing the reversible reaction now. And you are seeing that, and again there is formation of CO2 and H2O. Now this CO2 will be exhaled out of the body. Right? In these three methods, that is how the CO2 is being eliminated out of the body. So to sum it up one more time, what we have discussed, that we are seeing the transportation of carbon dioxide by the blood. Blood is the medium of transport, just like the oxygen. How many types? By three ways the blood can transport the carbon dioxide. The plasma, 7% of it simply is dissolved in the plasma. Carbaminohemoglobin. So how the carbaminohemoglobin is formed? It's slightly different. It gets attached to this amino acids of the protein of hemoglobin. As a result of that, what you are seeing the formation of the carbaminohemoglobin. That you are seeing the formation of the carbaminohemoglobin. How much of it? 20 to 25. And majority of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate ions, where this formation of bicarbonate ions has taken place. It has taken place in the RBC, right? In the RBC, there is this important hormone, right? There is this important hormone. That hormone is carbonic acid, right? Sorry for the mistake there. So this is the carbonic acid, right? Carbonic acid, CAR. Carbonic anhydrase. Extremely sorry for that. So carbonic anhydrase is the enzyme which facilitate that, you are seeing the carbonic anhydrase by carbonic acid and bicarbonate ions, and this has taken place in the tissues, and once it reaches the alveoli, the same reaction occurs in a reversible manner. That's why we have, this is the one pathway and this is coming back, yeah, reversible manner, and we have the formation of CO2, and it has taken place. It has been eliminated out, and the important concept for you to be remembering as well is the chloride shift. Right, the chloride shift. Why this happens is because of the increasing amount of bicarbonates, because of the concentration differences. So it gets out of the RBC and it comes into the plasma. Right, the carbonic anhydrase, is it exclusively present in RBC itself? No, but small amount of this carbonic anhydrase is also present in the plasma, but it's comparatively less. Very small amount is present, and majority of it is present in here. Majority of present is present in the RBC. So that is how the transportation. The Bohr effect also. The Bohr effect relates to the dissociation. Right? This Bohr effect is related to the dissociation of oxyglobin, releasing the oxygen so that this oxygen can be supplied. Why is that? Because of the presence of H plus ions. That is the transportation of carbon dioxide from the tissues to the alveoli. The medium is the blood. Okay, hopefully we are clear about this. Yes, easy concept. Thank you. So we'll see in the next segment.